Yes, so I don't even know how this came. Is this a Duncan one? This is one of your ones, wasn't it?
This is 100% a Duncan one, because it sounds...
Right, okay.
It sounds like Duncan should have had a great list straight away, and this list happened just before I hit record. Classic Duncan list.
So fucked it, didn't he?
There's one album on my list that I was listening to a couple of weeks ago, and when I was listening to it, I thought, that's such an underrated fucking album. Like, when you speak about this band, no one ever talks about that album. And it made me wonder why that was. And then I was like, that'd be a really cool topic to sit and just pick bands specifically that have released an album that you genuinely think is a great fucking album. But when people come to talk about the band, it's maybe not in the first one or two albums that come out their mouth as, this is a fucking great album. So that is essentially what the topic is. Picking a band and picking an album from their back catalogue that we genuinely think is a fucking great album that maybe just doesn't necessarily get the love or the lip service that the other albums that maybe aren't worth that time do get. So, yeah.
Okay. Okay, gents. Let's get into this then. In true Metal Epidemic form, I have put mine in order.
For the first time, yeah, that's nice. It's nice that that's happened. 7 shows.
Beg your pardon.
7, you did promise me a rose garden, but then it wasn't ordered, Dave, and that's why it didn't arrive. The first time I didn't ask you to order top 5 is when you fucking top 5 it. So I'm just not going to ask you again. So.
I just do it by default now, because every time we do one of these, you're like, "Oh, Dave, it's in top 5." So now I know it's always going to be top 5.
That's good. Mine's is not.
So, okay, I will be doing mine's from 5 to 1. Number 1 being my
randomly.
Okay, excellent. Well, since it's your topic, Duncan, you can start us.
Yeah, so this is the one that actually inspired the whole conversation. The album I was listening to was From Bliss to Devastation by Vision of Disorder. Huge Vision of Disorder fan. Remember when they came back not long after Rock and Real Reviews started doing reviews, and it was like their first album in ages. The vocalist had been off and done Blood Simple, and put out 2 interesting, not amazing albums by any stretch of the imagination, but like that first Blood Simple album felt like an extension of where From Bliss to Devastation was kind of going. And it always had that little bit of a kind of southern hook in their hardcore style, but it became very prevalent on From Bliss to Devastation, which I would still say from the Vision of Disorder back catalogue is their most commercial album they've ever done. I think it is, to me, it is an album which is front to back bangers. Like, every single song is fucking great. It's full of headbanging riffs. I imagine that the songs were written in these kind of smoky, whiskey fucking ridden, hellhole practice rooms. Because it just has that it has a texture and a feel and a smell about when you listen to it, and it screams of the South, which is ironic because Vision of Disorder are not from the South, but they have that. They all have those hooks, and I think the production as well. I don't know who produced that one, but the production, everything just is on point, and it's the last album they did before they went on indefinite hiatus for almost a decade. And it's always one of those ones where I'm like, to me, that this album was going to be the stepping stone for them to go off and do huge things, and it never really materialised. And even when they came back, they did those 2 albums since reforming, and I think they went on hiatus again. I don't think they're doing anything now. Which is
those
a shame.
2 albums were amazing.
Yeah, the 2 albums they came back with were exactly the reason you should be a Vision of Disorder fan. Legitimately front to back fucking great albums. But once again, they returned to a more kind of old school Vision of Disorder hardcore sound. Whereas From Bliss to Devastation is the anomaly in their back catalogue. It's like a wee experiment they tried, and for whatever reason, and I don't know, I can only assume politics, because it usually is politics when a band tries something different. It's usually because one member of the band is really pushing for something and the rest of the band are not as keen, and when that person leaves they decide to just stop doing things. But I think at least one of the guitarists went along with the vocalist to do Blood Simple, which makes me think it was maybe those guys that were into the sound they were going with, and it fucking sounded amazing. It still gets played. I play it like every couple of months easily, and it is like I say, it is their most commercial album for sure, but it's one of those ones where I don't think there's at all anything that I would remotely call a bad song on it. I think everything goes from shades of great to awesome. So yeah, from Bliss to Devastation, 2001? Question mark? 2001? I think. I should really check that. But it's way back in the day. Way back in the day. He's checking right now as he talks. Not filling for space. He wouldn't do that. Would not do that. It's not my style, Dave, and I'm not still filling for space, because that would be a bad thing to do on a podcast from Bliss.
It was 2001, Duncan.
2001. Thanks for leaving me hanging there, Dave. Yeah.
It was produced by Machine.
Oh, right. Oh, he's done fucking shitloads, so it shouldn't surprise me then.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I would agree with that one. Yeah. Cracking album, actually. It's one of those bands where if you look at their back catalogue, I don't think they've had a bad album.
No, Vision of Disorder are ridiculously consistent. So,
yeah.
And they always sounded, even right back at the very beginning, they always just sounded like, this is a band that have been doing it forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's very confident, very mature sounding, so yeah.
Mm-hmm. Nice. My number 5 is Cannibal Corpse.
Of course it is.
The Wretched Spawn.
Really? Wow.
Yes.
That's a good choice.
Yes.
Yes.
I think
that's a good.
Yeah. Look at Duncan's face, like what?
Yes. Oh, Cannibal Wretched Spawn. You say my favourite. I say 5 stars on fleek. Says this reviewer.
Great eyebrows. I think if you asked like most Cannibal Corpse fans, I think most of them would pick like one of the classics as their favourite album. They'd probably it'd be like Butchered at Birth or Tomb of the Mutilated, maybe even The Bleeding, like at the top of their lists. One of the classics, as I say. But for me, there's always been one album that stood out to me, and it's one that I probably go back to the most out of their back catalogue, and it's The Wretched Spawn from 2004, I think it was. While I love all of those albums, the older kind of classics, like when you listen to them now, I think some of them, the production maybe sounds a bit dated, just because of when they were actually recorded. You know what I mean? These albums are really fucking old. Like Butchered at Birth was like early 90s, I think it was 91, something like that. And I'm sure that in the 90s it sounded great. And as much as I love fucking Hammer Smash Face, it doesn't hit me like their newer albums. And The Wretched Spawn for me just ticks all the boxes. I think the production is hard hitting, but it still has that like death metal aesthetic. The tracks on that album, I think, are some of their best work. It's a very varied album in like tempo and rhythm, but vocally, I think it might be Corpse Grinder's best. It's actually like for an album as heavy as it is, it's actually pretty catchy. And I know that like catchy and Cannibal Corpse in the same sentence isn't usually something you'd hear together, but for a band that sing about disemboweling people, it is a pretty catchy album. I thoroughly enjoy this album. As I said, like it's usually my go-to if I'm looking for something just fucking punishingly heavy. That's usually when I go to, and I'd say it's like, again, as I said, if you ask someone their best or their favourite Cannibal Corpse album, it's not the one people would put at the top of their list, but I think it's highly underrated. So that is my number 5. Kyle, what do you have?
Well, I don't have Wretched Spawn. I've got to say, actually, that album, Skeletal Domain, they put out a few years ago, that is absolutely my favourite album by them. It's even, but all the other ones, they're amazing, and I love them since the late 80s, early 90s, all that stuff, whenever they started. But it's like that one like you said, ticked all the boxes. Yeah. Just like finally they saved up all their best riffs for years and just put it all on that album, and I was like, haha, you can do great things. Awesome.
I know, like for a band that have had so many albums out, they're another band that are like just seem to be getting better. Like it's crazy.
Somehow, yeah. Anyway, no, my number 5 is Shadow Zone by Static X.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
I love that album. I really think it's one of their best things. I don't know, like from the first track, it just goes right in. No intro, no nothing, just and it's fuck, okay. But like every time you hear about people talking about Static X, it's always like Wisconsin Death Machine and then all the other shit. And I'm like, what the fuck? It's so good. Like I said, it just starts. There's no pretense, just in, and that's it. And it carries on going the whole way through. And they've actually got a couple of slower songs on that one, which is the first time I heard them from Static X. And I was like, this is really good. This is really, really good. And so I don't really know how much more I can say about it, but it's I just don't understand. It doesn't really get hate. It just sort of gets laid by the wayside. People always talk about like the first two and like the last one, Cult of Static, whatever the other one. No. And of course, the ones that have come out after his death. But it's like, this one just never gets talked about, ever. And I remember putting it on for the first time, just going, whoa, all the way through.
I will back you up. I will, like, my order of listening of the Static X albums will always be Wisconsin Death Trip first, but Shadow Zone is always the second one for me.
Yeah.
I think it's the one that shows the most dexterity of the band. It shows Wayne Static as being more than just a one-note wonder, because he does do some singing, and the singing's fucking great. But the production, and I think the fact that it's a concept album as well, I think really works for it. So yeah, I'm with you on that one.
Really do.
I had a big, what's his name, Josh Freese on drums, that one as well.
Yeah, you can do no wrong with Freese on drums.
Yeah,
he's on Freese. Yikes.
I'm taking your card back.
It's getting warm in here. Woo! It's what happens. That's the description of when you get a great drummer to play in your band. And he has fabulous eyebrows.
Okay, Duncan, back to you.
Okay. The whiskey is good. Right, this is not controversial. Well, is it controversial? See, I went for, at times, deliberately talking points. This is a talking point. This is one that's going to upset everyone. And I don't give a fuck. Right, this one, the band doesn't have many albums, right?
Okay.
They have 3 albums and 2 EPs. And everyone goes to the first album as the definitive album from the band. And I would argue it's not their best. And I am so in the minority, I think I'm the only person that holds this to be true. And as a result, this is why I've chose it for the selection here. And what's interesting is me and Dave recently watched the anniversary live stream, motherfucker. I don't think Nola's Dim's best album. That's right. I think Down to E Bustle in Your Hedgerow is a better album. I'll tell you why I think it's a better album. I fucking adore the production on Down to. It sounds like the band are playing in a giant bar. Oh, wait 1 second. They are playing in a giant bar. And it has that feel. There's a really earthy sound to it. I think the songs are just better. I think there's more of a mix-up of the southern styles. When you listen to the first album, when you listen to Nola, you can chart that, right, there's the Pantera sound, there's the Crowbar sound, there's the Corrosion of Conformity sound, right, this makes sense, this is why it's all here. When you get to Down 2, it sounds like a Down album. It's the first album where I think the band actually sounds like their influences, because their influences are things like Black Sabbath and Saint Vitus, and to me, Down 2's where you hear that. There's still a slight thrashy element on that Nola album. Yeah, it has the southern hooks, but there's still a slight thrashy element. To me, the second album was the sludge album, and it's fucking great for it. Like Stained Glass Cross and New Orleans is a Dying Whore, and just like fucking amazing song titles. Phil Anselmo is fucking like, well, on every album he's fucking amazing, and he goes really, kind of soft and quiet in moments, and then hammers out some, like, because this, at the time they wrote that, was want to say it's about the time he was starting to do stuff with Superjoint Ritual as well, so you get that crossover. So there was a vulgarness about his voice. It was starting to get deeper, and it suits the music a bit better. My favourite songs that Down have ever written are on NOLA, but their best complete album to me is A Bustle in Your Hedgerow, and it is why is my next choice here. Down 2, A Bustle in Your Hedgerow.
Ooh.
Hot fucking take. So hot you can't lift it.
You have to set up your inbox for all the hate mail you're going to get.
And it's the weird thing, like, see when we saw them do their live kind of set, they played about 4 songs from A Bustle in Your Hedgerow, nothing after that at all, which is weird. Because I'm like, you have stuff beyond this. Play Witch Tripper. Phil can sing that. His vocals are in the right range, and they didn't do it. But they played a couple of songs off A Bustle in Your Hedgerow, and they sounded fucking monstrous. So yeah, I don't know what it is. The first time I listened to that album, I heavily fell in love with it. And NOLA's still a phenomenal album. NOLA is ranked up there amongst the best, but I just think as DIABOLOUS as a band, I think their second album is more representative of how they sound than NOLA is. Because nothing they've done since NOLA sounds like NOLA.
No. Interesting.
There you go. Oh, you see that? I told you, coming from left field. Pucked that whole conversation, that argument and that statement out of my arse 2 seconds before we hit record. What a guy. I'm going to wake up hungover and full of regret.
You sound like me tomorrow.
It's also the name of my autobiography. It's coming out next year as well. Remember, pick a copy. What you got, Davey boy? Sexy Dave. Any hot takes? This isn't their best album. This is their best album.
This one could go either way. It's the one on my list that I'm unsure whether it is classed as underrated or not, but I'm going to go with it anyway. I'm going to go with 1998.
Oh, right.
The self-titled album from System of a Down.
Oh, that's a
This is a fucking great thing. This is a great... Yes, Steve. I've never wanted to hug you so much as I want to do right now. Fuck toxicity. Honestly. Yeah, Dave.
Yeah, well, this is my argument. People absolutely stroke themselves silly over toxicity.
Right?
And yes, okay, it's maybe their biggest selling album.
It is. It went to number 1 in the UK.
Yep. It has all the catchy bits and all that. But for me, nothing will beat the first time I heard the guitar intro from Sweet Pea kicking in on that self-titled. It is a fucking phenomenal album.
Yep.
For me, it is their best album.
Yep.
It's their heaviest by a clear mile. And for me, it's absolutely... I know Toxicity is produced very well, but production-wise, I think Rick Rubin done a fucking stellar job on this.
Yep.
Absolutely. It's aggressive, it's quirky, it has some ridiculously heavy riffs on it. And for me, it'll always be my favourite release. I think it is an underrated album. And I've talked myself into it now.
I think you don't have to win us over, and I think the interesting thing is, whilst I think all three of us share consensus, I think you're right. I think if anyone ever talks about System of a Down, it's toxicity, and I understand why. I get your point, ladies and gents of the fucking metal community. I understand where you're coming from. Yes, it is their most commercial album. Yeah, and it does retain that heaviness, and it is a fucking weird and quirky album. Ain't nowhere near as quirky as that first album. That first album has fucking weird elements and Mr. Bungle ripping out it everywhere. But what I love about it is it's an album where you listen to Toxicity. Toxicity has a bright vibrancy from start to finish.
Yeah.
When you listen to their self-titled, there are some really dark, really fucking dark moments in there, and moments that are just like pure nuts, like just pure anarchy, just recorded. I think it's got Les Dern singing on it, which I think is a fucking great
thing.
Yeah, because I think the more he got involved with the band, the less I was interested. He's also the main reason they just don't do anything now. And like it's all his side projects did fuck all. You notice that? So less of him. But also
Actually, no, I didn't.
They also used the tri-vocal really well on that album. So, you know, his kind of really high-pitched, wobbly sound, Serge's great range that I've got, and what's his chops on bass? Can't remember his name. Chavo, yeah. His, like, really low kind of growly thing that he does to perfection on it. And I also think it's the one where you get most playfulness in the music. Like, there are sections of Toxicity that just sound like the drums are just going to do the same drum beat they did in the previous song and the song before that. It's all you're all the way right through. Whereas when you listen to there's jazz, there's punk, there's definitely metal, but there's weird abstract stuff going on there as well. It's clearly A Country Mile their best fucking album, and if you disagree with that, fuck you. Yes, Dave. Yes, Dave.
When we brought up the idea of covering a System of a Down song in the band, there was just like one guy was like, "How about something from Toxicity?" and the rest of it were just like, "No," you know.
That man was fired from the band.
Yeah, it's like, let's do aerials. We were like, let's not bore ourselves to death, and we ended up doing "Sugar." We do that live, and it's one of the most songs. I play bass in the band, and it is one of the most fun songs I've ever played on bass. Yeah. It's all over the place, and it's just like, and I have to do the backup growling too, the screams and stuff, and it's just like, how the fuck am I going to do this? It's actually a really simple part, but it's just like all over the place, and it's so quirky, and it's like. I love it. I came across, and their song "D Devil" is my favorite.
Oh, so good. They had the. I came to System of a Down through. It was actually Dave that gave me the album, actually, but I'd heard them before because there was a PlayStation game called Armageddon that had Bruce Willis in it, and it's not the one that you're thinking about. You know, I could stay away just to see you breathing. Not that one. You know what I mean? Not that one. I'm sure it was called Armageddon, and it was like the end of the world, and Bruce Willis has to do things, and as he's kind of post-apocalyptic thing, and as he's running through one of the levels, there's a giant fucking screen. And one of the city hellscapes, it's kind of almost Blade Runner-esque, and it's System of a Down that are playing it, and it's that, you know, God wants you to go to war, and it kicks in, and they, you know, we will fight the people, and I just remember always going, that's cool as fuck. And then about 6 months later, me and Dave started hanging out, and Dave gave me a System of a Down album. You like shite, Duncan? Listen to this shit. And I was like, thanks very much, big sexy Dave. One day we will have a podcast together, and I want to ride you. And I remember taking it home and listened to it like on repeat. I bought it like 2 days later. And when I found that song was on it, my mind was fucking blown. I was like, there's a whole album of this band. This is fucking incredible. And I can't remember the last time I listened to Toxicity. I can tell you the last time I listened to System of a Down's self-titled album was about a month ago. So there you go.
Nice.
Wow, Davey's hitting it in the park. Davey actually did do work here. It makes me feel like I didn't do enough. Cunt.
We're not finished yet. Kyle, what you got?
Oh man, I don't know what I can say now. That's such a good pick. It's
a really fucking good pick because it's controversial but legit.
Yeah, I remember having the sweater of the album cover, and I wore it to death. It was like rags. Cool. Yeah, and I wish I still had it, but I miss it now.
Yeah. I wore it down to the point it could only be used for a cum rag.
But I didn't because I respected the album too much.
I respected the album too much. I did not stain it with my jism.
I hung it on the wall instead and put the sweater in the closet. No, all right. I think my next one is going to be... I kind of want to get you to guess, but you never will. So it's just going to be KOLOSS by MESHUGGAH. It's not. Nice. It's not that old an album. It came out after Obscene and before their previous one. 6, 7, 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And of course, the previous one, I can't remember the name of it now. I wish I could. Violent Sleep of Reason was recorded live, and the songs in it are incredible. And it blew me the hell away. But the one before that, KOLOSS, it doesn't often get talked about. Like, everyone's always like, bleed, Obzen, and obviously Chaos Sphere and stuff like that. And I'm like, but Kolosss is a fucking great album from start to finish. It might have one bit in the middle where it's a bit samey, but I'm like, I don't care. The rest of it's really good. Like, it's definitely Meshuggah, because only Meshuggah can do Meshuggah. Trust me, I've tried. But they managed to keep it interesting, and they managed to keep it, like, just great all the way through. The riffs are just mind-bending, as always. And none of it gets too samey, except for that one little cleany, sort of quiety bit in the middle. But just the first couple of songs where he's screaming about, I am Kolossus, I'm like, oh, yes, you are. Yes, I believe you, you know?
I almost put on Meshuggah. I almost put Chaos Sphere on my list.
Really?
Because I feel like I'm the only one that ever likes to talk about Chaos Sphere. And then I went online.
Me and my buddy talk about Chaos Sphere all the time.
I went online, and apparently all this time I've been like that. I'm fighting the good fight. No, apparently there's plenty of people online fighting that fight, so it got taken off my list.
Yeah, good idea. Carpenter Brute just put out a cover off a song of Chaos Sphere. It's like synthwave version of Meshuggah. I haven't checked it out yet.
Oh, it's so good.
I have
so
to.
good.
I really have to, yeah. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. But no, Koloss, it's an amazing album. It's really good. I think it's overshadowed a little bit by the one that came out after that, Violent Sleeper Reason, because they did it live. And obviously Obzen was the one that, you know, what's the word?
Big Davey's a nothing man, so he'll hear. Yeah. He's hearing what you're saying, but he's all he can hear is nothing remastered and with 8-string guitars.
Yeah,
as if they needed that at that point. Is there any way to make this more technically heavier? Oh, there is an extra string, you say. Bows up. Here we go.
I got one of those right there. And another one there. Anyway,
it's a good shot, actually. It's a good shot. You're right. No one talks about Colossus, and I think there's a good 3 or 4 songs in there that I legitimately think are up there amongst their best. So
yeah, absolutely. It just I don't know. I don't get why it doesn't get mentioned. Like, I see articles about it, and it's just like completely left alone. Like, not even a mention. It's like, no, this album's really good, great. And I had it on repeat for so long after it came out, and I still give it the odd listen every month or so. Or if not the whole album, like a few songs off it. So that's why it's my number 4.
Nice.
Guess what my number 3 is going to be? You never will.
So it's back around to me. Where to go on my list, because it's not ordered. Here's one, right? You are arguably the biggest metal band on the planet right now. No, you're not Metallica, so don't worry, I'm not going to talk about them. But you are, of the modern metal bands, you're right at the top of your game just now. People talk about how fucking great you are, but what they don't talk about is the fact that you had a little name change. And when you came back from your little name change, you put out a little album called New American Gospel. You are, of course, Lamb of God. New American Gospel is legitimately groundbreaking. And it's weird that when people talk about Lamb of God, they don't talk about how groundbreaking New American Gospel actually fucking is.
Yeah. Like,
see, when you're talking, if you're charting that whole kind of new wave of American heavy metal, it's weird how Lamb of God are always mentioned, but they talk about the album that came right after New American Gospel and not New American Gospel, which clearly is the album that is the one you should be talking about as a transference of, there's this brand new kind of new thrash kind of styling sound, not quite metalcore, but is influenced by those thrasher kind of more riff-driven songs that is sweeping America, and these are the bands to watch out. Like, New American Gospel retains all the nastiness of the stuff they were doing on Burn the Priest, and it shows glints. There's weird, because when you go back and listen to it, there still to this day there's little accents or little flavours to almost everything they've done since. Just little bits on the guitar or little bits on the drums, that to stuff they would continue coming back to and revisiting and re-evolving and redeveloping. The only thing that might be off-putting to anyone, and it should not be off-putting by any stretch of the imagination, is Randy's vocals on it, because Randy hadn't really found his range. So it's all you know, it's all that really fucking high, which sounds fucking amazing. It sounds like a chicken being strangle-wanked. You know what I mean? It's fucking amazing, right? But it's so suits their sound. But he is a vocalist. Don't laugh at me, Dave. He is a vocalist that has only developed a really fucking incredible range. And when he found that mid-range, that's when their sound just became like much more marketable. Lamb of God, if Randy Blythe still sounded like he did on that album with that range, but the music had changed the way the music has changed for that band, they would not be as big. The fact that he found that mid-range, which is far more palatable and far more marketable, even though they are still heavy as balls, it wouldn't be, because, like, no, you can't name a fucking metal band that are as big as a Lamb of God that have a singer that has high-pitched screams as the default vocal style, because there isn't one. And now there is a reason behind that. So he's voice adapted, and that's where they appeal to a bigger bass. But, oh my God, like, that album, like, delivers moments where, still to this day, when you listen to tracks like Pariah, for example, which, like I say, like, will floor you. Black Label, Dave.
Oh, Black Label.
Is there a better song written on the planet for a fucking Wall of Death? I don't think there is. No. I think if you say you have one, you're lying, because the build up to that song demands that people run at each other with fucking flaming torches and pitchforks. I think it's they've went on and become one of the biggest metal bands in the world now, rightly so, because I think they are deserving of that title. I've seen them live 3 times, and various different stages of them being the band that they are now. I saw them the night that, if you've ever seen that Blu-ray, Randy Blythe got his nose broke. I saw them that night in Glasgow. So I've seen them in various different stages, from playing like moderately large venues to them playing the SECC, like the biggest venue in Glasgow, for metal bands anyway. And they still have that ferocity and intensity as if they're playing to a small club. And I think that's why they deserve the status they have. New American Gospel, to me, is the one that is always overlooked, and it's one that I can go back to every time and just go, this is this band became the biggest band because it's so fucking raw and it's so just different. Like, look at what came out that year. Nothing sounded like New American Gospel at all. It's fucking amazing. And yeah, it's right to talk about all the albums that have sold cajillion more copies. More than New American Gospel, that's fair, but it's up there amongst their best by quite a bit. So yeah,
I'd agree with that. Yep, I'd agree with that. Love that album.
Fucking
just that build up in the first track is just like, when I heard that snare drum, I was sold. I was just like, yep, I am in.
It's a big Davey snare drum if ever there was.
Oh, totally is.
Gotta listen to it right after we've finished recording. That's my number 3.
Oh, nice. Number 3. Okay.
Oh, he's building them still up.
See, my last one did so well. I'm not sure about this one anymore. Okay, so my number 3, what I've picked is the second studio album from Every Time I Die.
Dude!
I am...
Picked this! Legit almost picked this.
Nice. I'm, of course, talking about 2003's Hot Damn. Again, like, similar to System of a Down, this isn't their biggest or most popular release. And I would say that they do have better albums in their back catalogue now, with better songwriting, but this album, it just holds a wee place in my heart. It just sits in there. It's an album that, this has riffs for days. Like, riffs for days. It was back in the day where they didn't really give a fuck about song structure or fucking catchy choruses or anything like that. It's got a fucking raw production that suited the band's sound, and that kind of like chaotic feel they've got, but it was still memorable, you know what I mean? Which is something that, like, their first album kind of lacked. And then over the years they've become even more catchy in their choruses, which is but this is where they started to put it all together. It's not a perfect album, but it's an album I go back to on a regular basis. And for me, out of their whole catalogue, it's probably the one I feel is the most kind of underrated album. I love it. I think if you've never heard Hot Damn by Every Time I Die, then check it out. It's fucking amazing.
We
that
saw
album.
them live on that tour.
Was
At
that?
Tuts.
Oh,
Must have. If you were there with me, and this will be another one that you can't remember. I'm sure they played with Stamping Ground. I might be wrong.
That's what I was going to say. I was just going to say that was in the Stamping Ground. Yeah.
And one Stamping Ground were supporting Every Time I Die. Let that fucking sink in. That doesn't make it. Like, see what I think about that now? That doesn't make any fucking sense. So whoever booked that, you're a fucking head case. However, I didn't own the album. You dragged me along to that. I'd only heard the 2 singles on a Ferret Records, because we've been speaking about this earlier. A Ferret Records DVD, which had a compilation of music videos for bands out in it. And I'd only ever heard the 2 songs. I'd never heard the album, and I saw them live, and got the album the day after or something, and played that album to fucking death. And very much like the Lamb of God situation, that's one where Keith, the vocalist, has grown into his voice.
Yeah.
Because he's doing melody, but the melody's not great. It works, but it's not great.
Yeah. No, it does work, yeah.
But it totally works for the sound, and they are all about the playfulness on that album. You're getting they know exactly it's almost as if they wrote the songs for bits where they could just point at the audience and have everyone go, like, do claps. they're the band where the cowbell comes out, like fucking, like everything. It was all quirk, and it was all like the band come out on stage. I want to say the guitarists were wearing 70s tennis shorts with sweatbands on the head, and they were running while playing, and it was just fucking. And it was like the most crazy thing. I by that point, I don't think I'd seen Dillinger Escape Plan, but they were just the craziest thing ever. But that album has, there's no band that's Dillinger Escape Plan are the band that I like them to, and that Dillinger Escape Plan, like when you listen to Calculating Infinity, no band has ever released an album that sounds like Calculating Infinity. And then over time, Dillinger became weirdly more commercial while still being Dillinger Escape Plan. Every Time I Die are the same. Like, no band has ever released an album that sounds like Hot Damn, and over time they've become more commercial, and more people have sounded, or tried to sound like the more commercial version of Every Time I Die, but no one sounds like Hot Damn. It's fucking brilliant. Yeah, Dave, well done. Like, Dave's really good at this. I don't want to play this game with Dave anymore. Can we just call it, like, Dave's got the best list? Can we just say that?
I'm taking my list and going home.
All right, Kyle. What you got next?
Jesus Christ. How can I? All right,
he's doing really well. I hate him.
Yeah. You're doing pretty good too.
Also, he's got a 10-inch Bobby, you know what I mean? Which is another reason just to hate him. He doesn't brag about it either. But he knows he has one. You can see it in his eye.
And the mirror.
I'm putting this whiskey away. Oh, what's going on here? What? Oh. Number 3, Kyle.
So, number 3. All right, this album was like, when it was released in 2000 or 1999. 2000, I want to say, I think. Yeah. It was critically almost panned. It was not liked. It was a fair wait until this album came out from the previous one. 5 or 6 years. And people said it was self-indulgent. It was too long. It was too much of on it. And when I first heard it when it came out,
you're about to drop Saint Anger in here, because me and Dave are with you 100%.
It's my number 1.
If you'd have said that, I'd have just logged off. Saying that, actually, some Saint Anger songs have grown on me a bit the past few years. Like, the snare sound will never grow on me, but the songs are just, they've really grown on me. I'm like, you know what? Underrated. Actually, this is not bad, yeah.
Yeah, me and Dave love that album in a way which makes us hated by everyone that listens to metal.
Yeah. But that's not my album. This one is, when it came out, I loved it from the first moment I heard it. I listened to the whole thing all the way through, both CDs of it. It's a double album. And I just went all the way through, and I could not stop, and I still listen to it all the way through to this day.
Smashing Pumpkins?
No fucking way, I hate them. Billy Corgan is the whiniest bitch I've ever heard in my fucking life, and I wish he'd just fucking drop off the
High five.
I think I went the opposite way. I'd see, when I was younger, I didn't like the Smashing Pumpkins. The older I get, the more I like their earlier stuff. In a weird way, I should have liked it when I was a teenager. And now, as like a fucking 39-year-old man, I'm like, Billy Corgan really speaks to my inner child.
Of course he does now. He looks like a bit of one of them, doesn't he? Anyway.
I'm racking my brain to think of double albums that came out.
I know.
Wow, really? All right, well, I'll just come out and say it, shall I? It is The Fragile by Nine Inch Nails.
It's their best album, so you get no dispute from me. It's their best album, so yeah.
It's unbelievable. I've been listening to it non-stop for 20 fucking years, and every time I can pick out something I haven't heard before. Every time. And it's just like, it's so unbelievably well written and well layered and put together and produced, and it took 6 years and a drug-fueled rage to write. And I'm like, people, I keep reading the reviews from back then, and everyone's like,
they hated it. They absolutely, it was. Everyone's got revisionist history now about that one.
I know,
where they're like, we all called it was one of the best, and we're like, no, you fucking hated it. So,
they did, and people are like, oh, maybe it's a bit underrated. I'm like, no, it's definitely fucking underrated. This album is amazing from front to back. The way the songs flow together and the live show they put together around that as well, unbelievable. I actually saw them on that tour, and it's the best show I've ever been to. I got the DVD, and I wore out the DVD and I had to get a new one. And then with the DVD, they released still the stripped back versions of the songs. It was just
good.
And then the remix album that came out after that. It's just like, see, that was great too.
Oh, you two guys.
Tell you right now, Dave's list is shite. Kyle's list is the best.
Yeah.
It's their best album.
All right, it's not metal, all right, but fuck, it's such a great album. It is the best album. Everything pales in comparison towards it.
Yeah.
Like, you've got everything on there, from real, like, slow, chilled, laid-back songs about losing yourself to songs about the fucking Hollywood and the music industry and Starfuckers that's really fast-paced, and it just all blends together really well.
So,
I fell in love with it
as well. Moment. Like, he plays with, like, in ways which he'd done on the Downward. Oh, sorry, Dave, you're just gonna have to take a seat for a while. We're going to talk about Nine Inch Nails. We need to talk about Nine Inch Nails. Like the music. Like, I don't think people understand how well written that album actually is. Like, there is musical motifs that he modulates, changes, inverts, and then brings back over and over again throughout the two albums in ways that you don't expect and you can't pick out unless you really strip into it. And then he plays with stuff like, see, when you listen to Into the Void, and it's got the same bass line that's used on the first CD, but in a completely different context, and he funks it up, and just, he is like, it's a different fucking level of musicianship. I used to get so much shit for saying, like, because they came out not far off each other, and I used to get, like, from my friends who got me into metal were like, yeah, it's because you're new to this and you don't quite understand what the fuck you're on about. But I was like, yeah, Nine Inch Nails' best album is The Fragile, and Marilyn Manson's best album is Mechanical Animals. And no one understands that those are right, and I still hold that fact. And weirdly enough, and we mentioned them earlier on, they're the two albums that are most influenced by David Bowie. So
exactly.
Both those albums channel a lot of Bowie and kind of, renewing yourself, playing with styles, playing with different textures. But if you listen to Downward Spiral, it goes out its way to sound self-destructive and punishing and whatnot. And then The Fragile, he deliberately uses instrumentation that shouldn't be recorded the way it's recorded, like broken instruments and whatnot, to accentuate it's a mostly string-based recording as well, to kind of punctuate the idea of fragility. And it's just, I mean, Dave's heard this argument about a million times, and he's probably switched off now.
You can see it in his eyes.
It's because it's the album I always come back
over,
to.
His head's tilt back.
I think I've told Dave to listen to this album about 100 times in our friendship. And say, no, like, now you can go back and listen to it. Now go back and listen to it. Because I'm hoping one day you hear it and you hear it the way I hear it. Because to me, it's in my top 3 albums ever written.
That's my
I
top
think
two.
it's fucking incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, I could rip the head off your dick right now in a sexual way, Kyle.
And you'd be welcome to.
Oh, I'm so
Okay.
happy right now.
Are you two? Are you quite finished?
And another
hit your climax.
Yeah, like
We've got to clean
the
up.
last thing I'll say is most double albums are self-indulgent,
Yeah.
right? And you listen to them and you're like that. Just pick the 12 best songs from that and make one album because there's a whole lot of filler. Like the Fragile is the only album where I'm like that. You could have shoved a third CD on
Yeah,
there,
right.
and I would still think it's not long enough.
Yeah.
Well done, man.
It goes by too fast.
Sitting my
I haven't smoked in about 15 years, but I need one now.
Right, let me swing it with this one. Probably the most controversial, most commercial band that we've mentioned thus far. This band have sold maybe more albums than any of the bands we've mentioned on like a Monday. Like than most have done in their entire career. Interestingly enough, they found their sound, I'm using the quotation marks, on the album that came after their debut album. It's an album that was all over MTV, people loved it, but their album before it was a bit quirkier. It's a bit more funky, Dave. See where I'm going with this?
No.
He's not.
I'd like to go in the direction of Funky Dave.
Funky Dave. Dave, this is another one where Dave gave me this. You've had quite an impact on my musical enjoyment in that I had
welcome.
the commercial album that came after this, but I had never heard the album that came before it. The band is, of course, Incubus, and the album is Science. Science is the album that doesn't get talked about because it's the one that doesn't really have the polish of Make Yourself or Morning View, which are the two albums that everyone talks about when they talk about Incubus. But Science is the one where they are still kind of in that, well, we kind of like that Red Hot Chili Peppers funky babs, and we're bringing it over, and look at how quirky our Dex player is. And yeah, our bass player can play that fucking popping, slapping bass fast as fuck, which he does. But to me, it's the one where the band really show off the musicianship involved.
Yeah.
Maybe not necessarily the songwriting, because that came much later on, but the musicianship, the highest caliber musicianship Incubus have ever recorded on an album is on Science. Just across the board, drumming is phenomenal. Brandon Boyd's vocals are still kind of abrasive. He's still doing the kind of screamy stuff on there, but his melodies are fucking amazing. There's a bit of the old bongo drumming, which works really well. And the guitars are cool. Just everything about it. It's just, and it's a really well recorded album.
Yeah.
And they do the melodies, the quirky melodies, and yeah, it's to me it's a fucking great album, and it's maybe top 2, top 3 Incubus for me, and it's the one that no one talks about because when you speak about Incubus, unless you're me and Dave, the albums you speak about are the ones that people remember, which are specifically Make Yourself, which was fucking huge, and Morning View, which was even bigger. And yeah, they've done plenty since, and they're a band that, through pure goodwill, whatever they release, I'll check out. Anything they release, I'll check it out. Even when they went like so saccharine and poppy on their releases, I will check them out. I'll give them a listen. I really enjoyed their most recent EP, which released this year, because it had it kind of had an older feel to it, which I really enjoyed, and there was a weird 80s kind of pop thing going on, which I really enjoyed as well. But yeah, the musicality on Science is ridiculous for a band that would basically become essentially the metal or kind of alternative rock equivalent of a boy band, because that's how they were marketed post Make Yourself. So yeah, Science is legit fucking too cool for school, Dave. Too legit to quit.
Almost made my list.
Good man.
Yeah. It's a cracking album. Fucking love that album.
Yeah, so good. So good.
Yeah.
And to see them play live stuff off that, especially when you watch that, like A Certain Shade of Green, you know that bit where it breaks in the middle and the bass. He's not in the band anymore. The bass, and they're playing it like twice the speed, live, and he's still like, and it is tight as fuck. And I still rate that. I still think they have one of the most underrated drummers.
Yeah,
his drumming is fucking incredible, and no one ever talks about him either. So yeah, there you are. Incubus Science.
Loved it. Okay, where are we now? So number 2.
Oh, Davey.
Oh,
what you did?
I wonder if we're going to cross over at any point.
No one crosses the streams.
There's no been crossing the streams so far. Maybe this will be it.
So far, so good.
Okay, my number 2 is the 2003 self-titled album from the Deftones.
Oh, Davy boy. I wonder if Deftones would make it, because Deftones are a really good shout for this.
Yeah. Well, they've got such a strong back catalogue. And I think like it's one of these bands, like if you ask 5 people, what's your favourite Deftones album, you'd probably get 5 different answers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because people like them from different eras and different reasons. And personally, while I think White Pony is my favourite album, I think their self-titled album is seriously underrated. Quite possibly their heaviest record. The riffs are huge on that album. But the album still has like those elements that make Deftones who they are. After they released White Pony in 2000, I really didn't expect them to come back with an album like this. No. Like, it's got the textures and the big soundscapes and stuff, like Minerva being like a good example of that. But it's a very riff-driven album. The guitar, like the thickness of the guitars on like tracks like When Girls Telephone Boys, it was something that they hadn't really shown at that level before. But I fucking loved it. And it wasn't something they totally abandoned on the albums that followed either. Like Diamond Eyes had some big riffs on it. Even Gore, even like as kind of different as that album sounds, it still has some like moments on it which are quite heavy. But I still believe to this day that their self-titled album did it best. So that's my pick for number 2, Deftones' self-titled album.
Great choice. I think it's the one where, because remember when they released White Pony, and remember the infamous story about the record label saying, you just really need to give us a single. Right. Knife Party's fine and we all love it, and but it is a bit stabbing and suicide. So we're just saying maybe not market, and changing the House of Flies. Yeah, you quirky guys with your names. Can we just have so they released Back to School, which was the remix, the redub of can't even remember the original name on. Oh, I can't. It's kind of annoying me now. The original song on thingy, and then they did the Back to School tour where they refused to play it live. We saw them. I saw them on that tour. I don't know if you were there. Taproot and Linkin Park supported.
Yeah,
yep.
Yeah, I saw that one.
So, which once again, let that sink in. Taproot were the opening band. Linkin Park, who just dropped their album, came out and played Hybrid Theory, and it sounded fucking amazing live. Not ashamed to say it. And then Deftones came on stage and then did not play the song that the record label made them put out that release. So it did not surprise me that their next album was heavier at all, because it's like Deftones are the band. They are the band that just don't appear to want to play by any. There's many times over the Deftones could have sold out, and they've just never done it. And I kind of love that about them. That album that's another album that doesn't have a bad song on it, like at all. I listen on the regular to Pins and Needles. I think Pins and Needles is one of the best Deftones songs. I love the way it starts, and then the drums come in off the time when you think it's going to do, and it has this huge chorus. And but there are some moments, some of the quieter moments towards the end of the album are they have that song which has a discordant piano that kind of drives it. It's fucking, I love it. And it's one of the few times, as the examples were mentioned earlier on about the synth player actually having a prominent part in what they do in the songwriting, because it's mostly driven by this piano thing, and Chino's kind of haunting vocals over the top of it. That's a fair shout. I don't hear nearly enough people talk about that album out with talking about Minerva, which you should talk about because it's fucking huge. So yeah, Davey boy, just
nice.
Is there anything he can't do at this stage?
Time will tell. Kyle, what you got next?
It's not like you're number one, and that's when it all goes tits.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I'm not waiting for that. I can't. All right, my number 2 is an album that got the group dropped from the label they were on.
Okay.
I'm going to lead with that.
No, I don't like this one. This is where I think this is going. I don't like this album.
But it's actually a really great album. It's the first album in a long time. They'd had one. It came out in 2004.
We're fine. Okay. It's not the one.
The album before that came out in 97.
No,
so it was quite a gap between them.
No, we're alright.
Yeah. And the albums since then have catapulted that band into even more fame than they rightly deserve, which actually, no, they deserve it because they're amazing. I say band, it's a group. And this was made by one guy. The other two were not included in this album. They were included on the tour, of course. But it is, I mean, both your faces like, what the fuck are you talking about? Just tell us. This is, again, it's not strictly metal. It is Always Outnumber, Never Outgunned by Prodigy.
Nice!
Ooh.
Love that album. Fucking love that album. Were they dropped off the label because of this album?
They got dropped off Maverick, yeah. They were off. They released their best of afterwards, that, their Law best of Prodigy afterwards, and then cut. That's why, it took them so long to come up with something new, because they were trying to shop a record for an album, and Howlett had. Yeah,
and interestingly enough, the album they came out with afterwards is the one that Dave listened to for about a whole year solid.
Yeah.
So every time you went in his car, that's all it was. Spitfire was on fucking loop with Juliet Lewis banging at the box.
Love Spitfire. No, that's the lead track on Always Outnumbered. It's Spitfire. As soon as I put that on, I was like, "Yep, I'm in. Sold. That's it. Done." Like they didn't really have any like vocals. Like I think that's why people didn't like it so much. Yeah, because it didn't have any of the lead vocal stuff that was like famous from Firestarter and stuff like that. It just had more sampling and lots of. It was very different. It was a bit more down tempo. It was quite aggressive still, but it had a lot less of the sort of jungle stuff and. Which found on their last album, they kind of went back to their roots on that one. But this one, it was very different, and I think people were expecting more of the same, but they didn't get it, and that's why they didn't necessarily like it that much. But I thought it was a fucking great album. I played it all the time. I've still got it up on the shelf. I listen to it not as often as I should, but I mean, it still comes on every now and then, and I have a good time with the singles at least. So I think it's a criminally underrated album. It's got some great stuff on there. And really good sampling skills, of course, from Liam Howlett, because, of course, he's just the god of sampling. But, like, the song Memphis Bells, the way he did that bell, I have no idea how he did it still. I've tried to recreate it. I have 6 cowbells in my house, and I still can't get it. I say no amounts of processing, and I'm just like, okay, you're just a god. I'm just going to listen to it. Forget it. I'm not trying to recreate this anymore. So yeah, Always Outnumbered, Never Outgunned by Prodigy.
It's a fucking great album. It's a great album. It doesn't have enough songs about Baby having a temper like the previous album. How that one's not fucking got them dry, I don't know. It's a great fucking
Not
album.
enough controversy.
There we go.
They got sued for that song, didn't they?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, like, and then they're like, no, we're just going to have some guns now. Like, oh, you're fine.
Yeah, Maverick's a weird label. Like they had Deftones for the longest time as well. So
really?
There you go. So yeah, Deftones and Prodigy were on the same label, and Tantric as well.
Oh yeah.
All right. Cool. Yeah.
For no reason at all. That's a good one. That's a really good one.
Thanks.
I'm going. I'm just gonna go right. I think if you're a fan of this band, this is a dirty album. This is an album that you don't really like to acknowledge. There's a reason you don't really like to acknowledge, because one of the guitarists took over a more prominent role in the writing. And as a result of that, it's maybe less.
Down again.
No, it's not. It's maybe less of the lead guitar work you would expect.
Slayer, no?
Is Dave, you've called it. You've called it already. Slayer have one album which, not the punk one, before everyone starts going there. Slayer have one album that people look at and say that's when Slayer tried to go new metal, and they don't like it. And you're all fucking wrong, because Out With Stain of Mind, which is, right, arguably a Cold Chamber riff, it's local, right? And they're still getting around that. It's local with a solo, right? Which kind of rhymes, and that's going to be the new name of my autobiography, Local with a Solo. Coming November 2023, which is the month I'll die. Just guessing. You see this shit, it's a podcast, and if I do die, that's scary. So anything else I've said, like Fleek, for example, that sounds ominous now. To me, like, Diabolous and Musica is fucking brilliant. It's another one where I really like the songwriting. I really like it's not nearly as fast as the other Slayer albums, but I think that's a deliberate choice. It's them trying something a bit different. They definitely detune further in it, and Kerry King was listening to a lot of new metal at the time. People act as if that's a bad thing.
It's a great album. It's one of my favourites from Slayer, up there with World Painted Blood. It's amazing.
It's got so many fucking amazing songs in it. See, the first time I listened to Pin, like, the hair on the back of my neck went up. It is like, it's just an evil, angry fucking sound. I love Tom Araya's vocals front to back on this one as well. Is that kind of staccato, not rap. People will argue it's rap. You don't know what rap is. Like the kind of staccato, like shouty thing that Araya does, but he sounds really pissed off, like really, really, really angry. And some of the riffs are just brilliant. It is front to back a fucking proper mosh pit headbanging album, and I think it's brilliant. I think is unfairly maligned because there are a couple of songs that deliberately go much slower than Slayer had done before, and maybe much more kind of headbanging groove than Slayer had done before, and thus people thought that Slayer were selling out. Trust me, like, Slayer could never sell out. That's the whole fucking point. It took 25 years for Slayer to become like this, like, non-stop Colossus machine that they became in the last 10 years of their touring cycle, where they could just basically do whatever the fuck they wanted. It took that long. Until that point, they were still scrapping and scraping for everything they could get. And Diabolous and Musica is a great example of that. I think Paul Bostap's drumming is brilliant on it. Yeah, I think it's easy, fucking really, really well written. Once again, really well recorded. Fucking great heavy metal album. Interestingly enough, it was a coin toss between this and God Hates Us All, which I also think is a criminally underrated Slayer album, which it was the first one they did after this. They'd been away for a wee while, and they come back, and it's another album that has a couple of, like, Here Comes the Pain, which is that's the riff. That's a new metal riff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is.
They still had that in there, and that's how Kerry King was writing his riffs. I'll tell you right now, if that's how Kerry King writes his riffs, write more of them. I fucking love it.
Yeah.
But Diabolous and Musica is an album that I still listen to, and I've seen Slayer twice, and both times they played Stain of Mind, and it was my highlight of the gig. I love that song more than I should. I love that song.
Favourite Slayer album, I'll tell you. It's the one. It's like, yeah.
If you ask someone to do a Slayer list, there are plenty of Slayer albums that appear much further up the list than Diabolous and Musica, and I don't necessarily think that's right.
No.
I agree.
There we go.
Nice one.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, number one.
It's God Hates Us All by Slayer. Dave has picked it because I did not pick it, and he wants to make sure we cover both bases. Good work, Dave. This bump.
That's teamwork.
No. My number one
is The Pick of Destiny by Tenacious D. Everyone loves that first album, but the soundtrack that accompanied the movie is really killer shit. No?
Nope. My number one underrated album is none other than Nothing by MESHUGGAH.
Does not surprise me. Does not surprise me.
Love it.
You'll notice I stayed pretty quiet while Kyle was talking about KOLOSS and MESHUGGAH. I never said anything. And the reason for that was because I
mentioned nothing when I was mentioning KOLOSS.
No. Most of my kind of underrated picks haven't necessarily been like my favourite albums by the band, but in this case, this is indeed the best thing that MESHUGGAH have ever done.
Wow, controversial statement.
It is controversial.
It is.
Originally released in 2002, but then re-recorded and remastered in 2006. I love both versions, I do, but the 2006 version came with 8-string guitars.
I told you, I set this up. I foresee it coming. Maybe I will die in 2023. I'm fucking worried now.
This episode is going to be downloaded to fuck if that happens. The 2006 one, the re-recording and the 8-string guitars, what a difference. The tone on that album, it just annihilates me every time I hear it. When that riff kicks in on Stenga, I just can't help be totally sucked in by that album. The original version was done with real drums. The re-recorded version wasn't, so I do occasionally go back to the 2002 version every now and again. I do agree it has probably a more natural feel to it. You can hear all the little like ghost notes and subtleties of like the cymbals and stuff. It's a little bit muddier overall, but I do like both versions. But the re-recording, it just sounds pristine. I love the production. I love the guitar tone. I think it's one of the best guitar tones I've had, and one of the best productions for me. Like, I know a lot of people go on about Obscene, but I didn't love the production on that album. I think I had a lot of good tracks, but it was quite thin sounding, I thought, overall. This is just fucking heavy and meaty as fuck. I love this album. I go back to it constantly. I mean, to be honest, I don't think they have a bad album. They're one of those bands that very rarely put anything out that's shite. So I have a lot of favourite MESHUGGAH albums, but this one just... it's the top of my list. I just fucking love this album, and I'm very much in the minority. I know that, but yeah, I love it. Fucking love it.
Nice. I agree. When they came with the 8-string, I was like, yeah, absolutely sold from the first second. Just you keep doing more of that, and they did.
Yeah.
And then they made me buy an 8-string guitar, and I tried to write a MESHUGGAH album, and it was a 3-track EP of MESHUGGAH Lite. And
I like a MESHUGGAH Lite if I'm driving, though. I mean.
Yeah, right. Really refreshing on the road.
Yes, that is my number one. Kyle.
It's a fantastic number one.
Yes, it is.
I feel like I'm outgunned. Oh. All right, well, okay. This one was released in 1995. And
a lot of 90s albums in this, isn't there?
There are.
I think a lot.
And it's not metal at all, because I didn't get them.
Think about the 90s though. The 90s are a decade, like in general, where like hair metal's no longer cool. Grunge is kind of like, especially by the mid 90s, grunge is kind of dead by that point. That was going to kill it. New metal's kind of taken off, and no one really knows what that is yet. And Machine Head are doing kind of thrash stuff. There's a lot of hardcore shit. So it's just a big mix. It's a big mixing pot of shit in the 90s. So it doesn't surprise me that a lot of the underrated ones are here. So
yeah,
I agree. Actually, yeah.
It's not metal though, is what you said, Kyle. I'm now.
I know. Yeah, I didn't get the memo. This was a metal podcast. This isn't metal at all. But I mean, you gave me the thing, and I was like, well, I have to put it in because it's my favorite underrated album ever by anyone ever.
It's Oasis and it's Wonderwall.
It's so underrated. Rolling Stone gave it 1 star.
Oh god! Oh god! Oh my god! What is this?
It came out to critical. They fucking hated it. They didn't understand it. They didn't know what was going on. They were just like, what is happening with this guy? He's had so many good albums since the early 70s, late 70s. It was recorded in England by an English artist. And this was around the time he was getting friendly and not into bed, but into the same sort of things with Trent Reznor. And this is Outside by David Bowie.
Yes, nice work, man.
I listen to this album all the time, or at least songs off it. It's on my playlist just all the fucking time. I love it. I have no idea why people hate this. It's weird. It's got industrial stuff. It's strange. It's a concept album. Mm-hmm. It's a weird concept album, I'll give you that. But telling the story about art crime in 1999, the futuristic future of 1995, you know, and it's like, okay, cool. And I was sold within minutes. It was, I just love everything, especially when that song was remixed. I think it was by Trent Reznor. I don't remember. Anyway, there's a remix of that one song that I love as well. And it always makes me go back and listen to the whole thing over again every time I hear that one song. And it's my favorite underrated, because everybody hated it when it came out. And now, even now, it's like people are starting to be like, yeah, maybe it was underrated. I read an article not long ago, and they had it in like the 7th spot of Bowie's best albums. I'm like, you bastards are lying. You gave this one fucking star in the 90s. You're putting it in spot number 7 now. Yeah, I see what you're doing. I've loved it since back then. You can't stop me, you fuckers.
He did a weird bout. Like from that album onwards, because he toured with 9 Inch Nails, and they got on like a house on fire, which is weird. Like, see if you ever see the interviews, Trent Reznor and David Bowie, where like basically Trent Reznor sitting beside, like, essentially his musical idol, and he's trying to act all cool, and David Bowie just
not coming across.
Yeah, David Bowie just is cool. And he did that album. What was it like? It was 2 years after. Is Earthling? Earthling. So one that has I'm Afraid of Americans, which like Trent Reznor does remix on, which is fucking amazing. Yeah, everything you're saying. One of my favourite
Bowie songs, "Little Wonder" on that album. Yeah. That was a fantastic song.
Look how disgusted Dave is. Dave's not a Bowie fan. I don't get
It's like, how do you fucking bring David Bowie onto this metal podcast, you goddamn Norwegian fuck? And like you said, underrated. This is the most underrated album's ever been.
I don't think I've ever heard
from
it.
Rolling Stone.
Well, you've never
it's like, it's weird. It's like, you think of David Bowie, and he's done some weird songs and strange stuff and reinvented himself a billion times, but this one is out there. It is like, it's like if Ministry didn't have guitar. It's super. It is really out there. And if Ministry could write good songs. They got a couple, but I mean, it's unbelievable. And I just don't. I do get where people are coming from when they say it was, self-indulgent and it's got too many words in between the songs. There's like talky bits in between the songs, but I loved it. I was like, all right, fine, I get it, but fuck you, you're wrong.
I'd listen to David Bowie read the fucking phone book, so I don't care what they're on about. Amazing.
I listened to them just list the letters in the alphabet.
Yeah. I, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Oh, stop it! I'm getting some.
Yeah. That's right.
So yeah, David Bowie, Outside. Listen to it. It's an amazing album, and you'll never expect it from him either. That's the thing. He was like sort of always on the pop rock kind of in between all that, and then he came out with this, and it was like, what is this? This is slabs of concrete rubbing against each other. But it was great.
You want to go back and check out the Labyrinth? You will see his dick outlined through a pair of tights as he's rubbing a pair of balls in his hands. Greatest movie moment ever.
Hey Google, play Labyrinth.
Well, I saw my baby crying hard as babe could cry. Fucking love David Bowie, man. Honestly, I will not put you through the rest because I've got the cold. Suffice to say, I did dance the magic dance. So fucking
sorry, Dave.
Sorry. That's okay, Kyle.
Next time we'll have to make the stipulation: 5 underrated metal albums.
Yeah.
Not 2 metal albums, 1 kind of and 2 not. You fucking idiot.
Oh man, there you go. That topic turned out great.
Yeah. If you've listened to that and you think we are completely wrong, let us know. What are your top 5?
There are going to be many people that think I'm wrong about that.
Yep, send us your hate, whatever. What do you think? What is your top 5 underrated albums? Let us know.
It's safe to say Kyle picked if we're talking about underrated album, Kyle's list, there are 2 albums that are generally hated by the critics. So your list is maybe the most accurate in terms of fitting the brief, even though the 2 albums you picked are not within the genre. So I'll take that.
Yeah.
You're going to tell them,
accuracy, not genre.
Dave floated the topic for next podcast, and I can't. I put more effort into that one. I've been listening to so much shit. Do you want to tell people what we'll be covering next month, Dave?
Yes. I've got a few ideas for topics, but the one that we kind of have been playing around with is top 5 metal cover songs.
See, they stipulated metal this time.
Yes, I have. Yep. You heard it here. It's been recorded. Top 5 metal cover songs. So
it's
get your
Richard
thinking
Cheese
hats
doing
on.
Down with the Sickness. Oh no, sorry, it's not metal songs being cut. Right, I see what you're saying. Metal artists covering other people's songs. Got it now, Dave.
Yes.
No, that's fine.
So next podcast, we will put our thinking caps on, and we'll be discussing our top 5 metal cover songs.
Yeah.
Oh, is it metal covers of metal songs?
No. It's just
Or just metal covers of whatever
Just metal bands covering
song.
songs.
A song.
Yeah, songs.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just had to make sure I don't want to be called out again.
Because it's October, I'll let you know if your list doesn't contain at least one typo negative cover of a song, then your list is wrong. I'm not even joking. Like, see, you listen to typo covers, all of them are fucking amazing. So, just saying, that might be giving away too much. I retract that. So you'll be surprised next month.
top 5. So that means ordered.
All right,
Dave.
Oh, fucking shit, right. Top 5. He said top. I bet you show up next, man. I didn't order them.
Oh, we'll see.
Really?
No, they'll be ordered.
Don't touch me!